Good to have you with us. This is ARIRANG News, live from Seoul. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. First, a look at the stories we are following at this hour. President Park Geun-hye begins her third year in office today. Experts say she is a devoted president, but points out that she needs to change her leadership style. A prominent researcher in the U.S. says North Korea could increase its nuclear arsenal by a factor of 10 to have a stockpile of 100 atomic weapons by the year 2020. And Eurozone finance ministers approved Greece's reform proposal for an extension of its bailout program. Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol says this is good news for the global financial market. But first, we begin with a shooting incident which happens very rarely in Korea. 3 people were killed by a 50-year-old man with a shotgun in the city of Sejong this Wednesday morning. Police say the primary suspect, identified by his surname Kang, shot his ex-lover's current boyfriend in a convenience store. He also shot the ex-lover's father and brother nearby before setting the place on fire and fleeing. Kang was later found dead in an apparent suicide in the nearby city of Gongju a couple of hours after the shootings. Authorities say Kang had taken out 2 hunting rifles from a police patrol division. They add they have yet to find out whether he had a hunting license or whether the rifles belonged to him. Koreans with legal licenses for hunting can take out weapons from police stations only during legal hunting periods. Otherwise, gun possession is illegal unless approved by the government. Now, at the nation's top office, President Park Geun-hye has entered the third year of her term on this Wednesday. We have prepared a 3-part series on how she is being evaluated on various fronts. Today, we start with state affairs. She had a tough year last year, but experts say she will have to do a lot more to earn parliamentary and public support. ARIRANG's presidential office correspondent Choi Yoo-sun reports.
President Park Geun-hye began her second year in office, vowing to breathe new life into the domestic economy and improve inter-Korean ties to prepare for unification. But everything came to a standstill when the Seoul ferry sank off Korea's southwestern coast on April 16th, claiming the lives of more than 300 people. The government's lax response came under fire, and President Park vowed to strengthen disaster management and revamp her administration. But her personnel selection and insufficient communication were criticized, with 2 of her prime minister nominees being forced to withdraw amid controversies. A document leaked from the presidential office late last year and a controversial tax policy revision caused the president's approval rating to drop to an all-time low of 29%. Responding to public criticism, President Park has carried out a reshuffle and is expected to name her new chief of staff.
The question is whether the new chief of staff can mediate between the president, the political parties, and the people, while at the same time helping the president.
No expert seems to question the president's commitment to the country or her determination to improve the quality of living in Korea. They say for the Park administration to make progress, she needs to change her leadership style, give more authority to her cabinet, improve communication with the political parties and the public to promote the objectives of her reform policies, such as health insurance and public pension.
What's more important is for Parliament to lead discussions with the government and civic groups and set the framework for an outcome on the issues. If the presidential office takes the driver's seat, it will face a great backlash.
Political observers are unanimous in saying that now is the golden time for the president to better communicate to produce the desired results in an economic and reform drive. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
North Korea is believed to have 10 to 12 nuclear weapons as of now, but a prominent U.S. researcher says that number could jump by tenfold in the next 5 years. He adds Pyongyang's current missile, nuclear, and cyber warfare capabilities might pose a real threat not only to South Korea but also to the United States. ARIRANG's Kim Min-ji has the story.
North Korea could potentially expand its nuclear stockpile to 100 weapons over the next 5 years.
This, according to Joel Witt, senior fellow at the U.S. Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University, who says Pyongyang is currently believed to possess between 10 to 16 nuclear weapons. He gives 3 possible scenarios for the North's nuclear expansion, with Pyongyang forecast to double its stockpile at minimal growth, up to 50 at moderate growth, which presumes the nation's nuclear and missile programs continue to develop at the current pace, and in the worst case, a 10-fold increase from now. The expert also called on the South Korean government to give up its unrealistic fantasy of unification and see reality, stressing that North Korea is a country that will soon have between 50 to 100 nuclear weapons. And such developments pose a serious threat not only to the Korean peninsula, but also to the United States. U.S.-based think tank the Heritage Foundation says the North likely possesses the ability to place nuclear weapons on its medium-range missiles, as well as the technology to miniaturize warheads. Saying that Pyongyang has an extensive ballistic missile force, the think tank added the country has deployed about 800 Scud short-range missiles, 300 Nodong medium-range missiles, and 50 Musudan intermediate-range ballistic missiles. It goes on to say that the North continues to develop ICBMs, some capable of hitting the United States. The think tank also noted that North Korea has deployed 70% of its ground forces within 140 kilometers of the demilitarized zone, making it possible to attack South Korea with little or no warning. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Now, as for convincing North Korea to give up its nuclear ambitions, South Korea's top nuclear negotiator says the rest of the members of the Six-Party talks, excluding North Korea, have agreed to hold a round of preliminary talks. Will Pyongyang be interested, though? That's the focal point. ARIRANG's Hwang Sung-hee has more.
South Korea, the United States, China, Japan, and Russia have agreed on the need to hold exploratory talks prior to restarting the long-stalled Six-Party nuclear dialogue. Wrapping up a meeting with its Russian counterpart Morgulov Igor in Moscow on Tuesday, South Korea's chief nuclear envoy Hwang Jung-guk said the 5 parties reached such consensus through a series of meetings over the past few weeks. The South Korean envoy said officials discussed when and where the exploratory talks should take place and added that 6-way dialogue involving North Korea is also being taken into account. The prelude meeting will allow the 6 nations to meet with no strings attached and to test North Korea's sincerity about denuclearization before formally resuming the Six-Party talks, which haven't been held since late 2008. Seoul and Washington have stressed that Pyongyang first take the necessary steps to end its nuclear program, while China, Russia, and North Korea want to reopen the talks without preconditions. But whether Pyongyang will accept the invitation remains in doubt. The regime has been raising military tensions on the Korean peninsula in protest of the joint military drills between Seoul and Washington that kick off next week. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Police in London say they have reasons to believe 3 British schoolgirls who left for Turkey last week have crossed into Syria to join the Islamic State militant group. The schoolgirls are believed to have been lured in via social media such as Twitter and Facebook. Lee Ju-yeol reports.
The 3 British teenage girls that boarded a flight to Istanbul last week are now believed to be in Syria. London's Metropolitan Police said Tuesday that it has enough reasons to believe the 2 15-year-olds and 1 16-year-old have made it to Syria, presumably to join the so-called Islamic State militant group. With reports that at least one of the girls contacted an IS recruiter in Syria via social media before leaving London, British authorities have been working closely with Turkey over the past week to try to find the girls before they could enter Syria. However, with this latest news, it seems that their efforts have fallen short. Turkey's deputy prime minister criticized British authorities for notifying Turkey about the missing girls too late, 3 days after they disappeared, saying the girls arrived in Istanbul as tourists. The Metropolitan Police disputes that account, saying it notified the Turkish embassy in London a day after the teens went missing. Security officials say so far at least 500 British nationals have traveled to join the militants in Syria, often via Turkey. While continuing to lure in young people to join the terrorist group, Islamic State militants have also abducted at least 150 Assyrian Christians in northeastern Syria. Syrian Christian activists said Tuesday that the militants raided their homes, kidnapping people, including children, women, and the elderly. Earlier, the British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the militants abducted 90 people from villages inhabited by the ancient Christian minority. 이지훈, ARIRANG News.
Greece's new reform proposal got the green light from Eurozone finance ministers in Brussels on Tuesday, extending Athens' bailout program by 4 months. Korea's central bank chief welcomed the news but said there's still a long road ahead. For more on this story, here's ARIRANG's Hwang Ji-hye.
Greece brushed off a major uncertainty to receiving a bailout extension on Tuesday. Its European creditors approved a reform proposal and extended the loan program by 4 more months. The key creditors involving the European Commission, European Central Bank, and International Monetary Fund thought the list of reforms was serious enough, but warned that it's only a starting point.
This list is just an indication of the kind of reforms that they would like to push, like to replace, and also the ones that they would like to continue. And it's going to take time to really get into the details and to design a new contract or agreement which will carry us on for 4 months.
Greece's reform plan includes measures to tackle tax evasion, corruption, and reviewing public spending at every level. The extension now has to be approved by some lawmakers in several countries, including Germany, before midnight this Saturday. That is when the current bailout agreement is set to expire. On Greece's approval, Korea's central bank governor Lee Ju-yeol said it was good news for the global financial market. He added, though, that uncertainty still lies ahead and it's too early to be overly optimistic. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
U.S. markets closed on a new high on Tuesday, buoyed by positive news on the Greek bailout program extension and on indications that key interest rates will not change anytime soon. The Dow Jones Industrial Average and S&P 500 both beat Friday's record close, ending 0.5% and 0.3% up, respectively. The tech-heavy NASDAQ came just 1.6% shy of the record close set in March back in 2000. The rally came after U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen told a Senate Banking Committee in her semi-annual testimony that the central bank will remain patient on raising the near-zero key interest rate. She said the Fed will consider hikes on, quote, a meeting-by-meeting basis, though it was unlikely for at least the next couple of meetings, an indication traders took to mean an increase will not come until the fall. South Korea and China have inched closer to implementing their bilateral free trade deal. Seoul's trade ministry says the two sides exchanged provisional agreements this morning, 3 months after concluding negotiations in November last year. Tariffs will be lifted on over 90% of all imported goods from both sides within 20 years of the FTA taking effect. One notable thing here is that compared to other free trade deals, this FTA will see the largest number of Korean goods enjoying preferential tariffs, as it will include products manufactured at the Inter-Korean Joint Industrial Complex in Kaesong. South Korea and China hope to finalize the formal signing within the first half of this year. It will then need to be ratified by both parliaments before it takes effect. And Korea's consumer sentiment improved for the second straight month in February, but the improvement does not necessarily point to a strong recovery momentum. The Bank of Korea says its consumer sentiment index came in at 103 this month, up a single point from the previous month. The figure is lower than the level recorded last May, when consumer confidence was hit hard by the Seoul ferry disaster. Still, a reading above 100 means optimists outnumber pessimists. The monthly index reflects the overall economic outlook of consumers, their living conditions, and future spending plans. Now, in many parts of the world, adultery is no longer a criminal offense, but that's not the case in Korea just yet. Korea's Constitutional Court has already rejected petitions 4 times in the past with the reasoning that it could weaken social morality. But that's being challenged again, and the answer is set to come out tomorrow. Son Jung-in tells us more.
Back in 2008, Korean actress Ok Sori filed a petition with the Constitutional Court challenging the application of criminal law to adultery. She had been sued by her husband for having an affair. She challenged the constitutionality of the law by arguing that a person should have the right to choose the person who they want to love. But the court rejected the appeal, and after an ugly battle with her now ex-husband, a local court sentenced her to 8 months in prison. 7 years has passed since then, but the debate on whether adultery is constitutional or not is still a hot potato in Korea. The law is under review once again after a number of individuals filed petitions in the wake of the old case, and the court is to issue its ruling on Thursday. 4 appeals have been brought before the top court since 1990, but each time the law was ruled constitutional. However, the latest request by Ok in 2008 was short of 1 vote to overturn the statute, with the number of judges saying the law is unconstitutional, surpassing those who didn't for the first time. More than 6 of 9 justices must agree to repeal the law. Adultery has been seen as a criminal offense in Korea for over 60 years. It remains to be seen whether the criminality of what many see as a private matter will be overturned in Thursday's ruling. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Korea has confirmed its first ever case of the human-to-human transmission of a deadly tick-borne virus that claimed 10 lives last year, and this is raising concerns of a possible epidemic. ARIRANG's Kwon So-ah reports.
A bite from this 2 to 3 millimeter sized tick could be fatal. So far, the tick-borne virus, or thrombocytopenia syndrome, was only known to infect people through a direct bite. But now, for the first time in Korea, it has been confirmed that person-to-person infection is possible. Sanitation and health authorities said Wednesday that 4 people contracted the virus from a 68-year-old patient who had been infected through a tick bite last year. It's believed the virus was passed on to them as they conducted CPR on her. The patient died a day after she was admitted to hospital. The medical staff showed symptoms of the virus, such as fever and muscle pain, but went on to make full recoveries. The case is raising alarm bells inside and outside of Korea, especially as it comes at a time when epidemics are causing fear across the world, with the deadly Ebola virus still not contained. There are also questions about why the cases were only confirmed nearly half a year after the medical staff had shown clear symptoms of the virus. Experts say the SFTS virus could be contagious through the respiratory system, blood, or other secretions, and have raised concerns this virus could become a much bigger problem in Korea. Globally, this is not the first time person-to-person infection has been recorded. China reported 5 similar cases between 2012 and 2013. In recent years, health authorities in Korea have advised people to wear long sleeves and pants when going to grassy areas, especially during the warmer seasons. Last year, out of the 24 people who contracted the virus, 10 died. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
Well, 2 internationally recognized photographers have come together for a special exhibition that makes your everyday surroundings look and feel like they're from another world. Our Im Yoon-hee joins us today for this story. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. So, photographers Bae Byung-woo and UK photographer Michael Kenna, they're both considered very famous in the photography world around the world. But now they've opened an exhibition that puts the 2 artists side by side. Take a look. Bae Byung-woo first gained international recognition when he sold one of his photographs to Elton John. Since then, Pae, who specializes in capturing the beautiful pine trees and landscapes of Korea, has maintained his fame, continuing to attract some of the world's most famous people to his exhibitions. Pae, nicknamed Mr. Pine Tree, has now joined forces with one of the most influential photographers of the modern age, Michael Kenna. Their works share striking similarities, and now you can see them displayed side by side at Gallery Kong in central Seoul.
The foundation of my work is landscapes, and Michael Kenna works in traditional black and white. The photos are absolutely beautiful.
In fact, both photographers work in black and white, and both have mastered the fine art of photography, making use of all the elements. To the naked eye, the landscape may seem common, but through the special lenses of these photographers, the images become almost surreal.
It takes regular practice, a lot of hard work to get there. But yes, these are all common landscapes, and beauty, absolute beauty is in the commonplace.
The two artists may have similarities, but they also have their own unique artistic sensibilities, their own way of portraying the beauty of this world.
Like you just said, they seem to have a similar artworks, art pieces, and pictures taken, but at the same time, they have different kind of look into the world and how they view the world in with their cameras.
Right. So an interesting thing with photographer Kenna's works, so he actually worked the majority of his career in France, but he did make a trip in the 80s to Asia, where he said he was very impressed with his idea of Zen and simplicity, and you can see a lot of that influence in his future work. So definitely Asian influence.
Right, and if I remember correctly, Mr. Kenna did work in Korea too, and one of his photos caused quite a controversy here.
Right, right. So he actually took a picture of, it's called Seoul, a little island in the Gangwon-do province, and a few years later, Korean Air actually had a commercial, and it featured another photograph that looked almost identical to his photo, and so there was some lawsuit there because they said it's an infringement on his creative rights, but at the same time, you know, there was just back and forth controversy about that, but it also caused the Seoul area to become quite popular.
Right.
But at the very end, they decided it was not an infringement on his creative rights, but there were definitely unsettled feelings in the art community about their rights as creative artists.
Okay, so it's a good exhibition if you like, particularly like photography and you're interested in.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Uni, for bringing this story to us today.
You're very welcome.
Hello, I'm Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. Here in the capital, we can expect readings that are nearly 2 degrees higher than the seasonal average. All the other regions can expect a mild day as well, with temperatures lingering beyond or similar to the average as well. Now, mostly, though, we'll be under cloudy skies nationwide due to the low pressure front coming in from the west, and in some regions like Jeju Island, the clouds will be accompanied by this rain this afternoon, while Seoul and Gangwon-do province can expect rain this evening. Now, the estimated amount of rain on Jeju will be between 5 to 10 millimeters, while just 1 to 5 millimeters are expected in the upper provinces. Now, checking out the readings for today, Seoul will peak up to 10 this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will linger at 11 and 12 degrees. And moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 13, Dokdo hits down to 7, while Gyeonggang drops down chilly at -2 degrees. Well, that's all for now, Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And that's all the time we have for you now. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. Another edition of ARIRANG News with me coming up at 4 p.m. Korea time.